Coming in at number 10, we have the CHIMBU skeleton tribe. One look at this tribe sends shivers down my spine, and if I saw them in the flesh, I would very much want to run away. It seems that the CHIMBU tribe dress this way for special festivals, including the Mount Hagen Festival. The paint was originally designed to psychologically intimidate enemies, and also to present themselves as superhuman. The tribe live in a remote mountainous region of Papua New Guinea and first made contact with the connected world in 1934, although they do remain elusive, and to be honest, painted like that, I wouldn't want to run into them. I wouldn't want to mess with them.
Next up at number 9, Benedict Allen. While on his second trip to visit the Yafo people, a remote Papua New Guinea tribe with little to no contact with the outside world, after being dropped off by a helicopter to the remote land, he trekked for 3 weeks into the forest, hoping to track down the people who he had met years prior in 1988. He did actually eventually find the community once again, but not long after suddenly seemed to have disappeared. And the media outlets had no clue where Allen was, or even if he was still alive. Famously, he said to not come looking for him if he was thought to be missing, though this request was not followed by the media. Now, I will level with you, he was actually eventually found. But he wasn't happy with the outcome, as he insisted he was not lost and did not want to be saved. But ill with malaria, he accepted the help and was flown out to a hospital.
Coming in at number 8, we have the CHUKCHI people. The reason this tribe are on this list is because they are the only tribe in Russia that were never conquered by the Russian people, which actually must mean that they're pretty terrifying and hardcore. Historically, Russia has waged war with the CHUKCHI people on many occasions over hundreds of years. While some of the tribe's people were killed, they were never actually defeated. These days they live reasonably undisturbed in the CHUKCHI Peninsula. This is at the very north of Russia, parallel to the top of Alaska. It is cold up there. These people survive in those climates 24/7, and to be honest, to me, that makes them pretty hardcore and not to be crossed. A ghost at number 7, we have the Night Marchers. I really enjoy this, something different for this list. Often called the Night Marchers, the Hawakapo are ancient Hawaiian warriors that now are jobbed with escorting newly dead spirits into the afterlife. These are a more musical band of Grim Reapers. The Hawakapo are also known as torchbearers, and they walk across the land carrying, you guessed it, torches, but also weapons and drums which they play and chant. There have been sightings of these ghostly torchbearers, but if you ever come across one, you must not look them in the eye, as they may mistakenly class you as someone who needs to be marched into the afterlife. That is, unless one of your relatives is in the tribe who can vouch for you. It's rules. Those are the rules. You know that the Hawakapo are nearby if you hear distant drumming in Hawaii, if you hear conch shell horns, see faint torchlight, and smell faint foul odors. Rumours and reports of torchbearer sightings have been rife over the years and are absolutely ingrained in Hawaiian folklore. Unless you want to be marched down into heaven or hell or wherever they're going, I would say stay away from the tribe. Coming in at number 6, we have the KORUBO or the DSLALA tribe. The KORUBO, also known as the DSLALA tribe, are well known for their big clubs, as in big sticks. The KORUBO are one of the most isolated tribes in the world, and they do not want to be contacted. The tribe are visually scary to look at. They paint themselves with red dye made from the ruco plant. The tribe lives in the western Amazon basin and regularly have clashes with other local tribes. They use their clubs to beat people to death. They're also fond of the humble poison dart. The tribe are hostile to outsiders, and in recent history they have beat to death 3 loggers and workers from FUNAI, a Brazilian government initiative to protect indigenous tribes. Coming into number 5, we have the SURMA tribe. The SURMA live in the Bench Magi zone of the southern nations, nationalities and peoples regions of Ethiopia. The tribe are particularly scary and dangerous, especially if you're an outsider like us, because instead of clubs, spears or darts, the bands have automatic guns. Yikes. Guns aside for the moment, the tribe do have a tradition of beating one another with sticks as a rite of passage before they can officially become a man, so as you can gather, the SURMA don't shy away from violence. While the SURMA do have guns and are hostile to outsiders, there aren't actually any reported incidents of them shooting anyone, so I guess while things may seem barbaric to us, who are we to judge them? They probably just want to do their own tribe business and let us leave them alone. Coming in at number 4, we have the ANGHORI SECT. The The Angghori sect are infamous for their morbid worship practices. Now, they use a corpse during their rituals, and they often threaten to eat people. Have a watch of a CNN reporter interacting with them. Honestly, this freaked me out. Can you imagine being in this situation?
People on that side of the river are so afraid of the Anghori.
That's right, he actually said that I'd be terrified. The reporter then starts asking questions which are not met with a happy response. Have a listen.
Why do
Wow! I absolutely think I'd be bricking it. The sect are very secretive and they generally shy away from interactions with others, and honestly, that's enough to make me want to stay away from them. Okay, next up, not 100% a tribe, but like a terrifying story and a terrifying jungle gang in Papua New Guinea. At number 3, we have the cargo cult. This is such a scary story. This story starts with Stephen Tarry, a man who gathered thousands of disciples in Papua New Guinea. He lured them into the jungle and encouraged them to be part of his sect. The man wore white robes and preached his own gospel while standing on a rock and calling himself, and I quote, Black Jesus. The cult lived in the jungle much like a tribe, and Tari was their leader. He would regularly lead ritual human sacrifice, which is repugnant. On one occasion, he slaughtered a virgin he called his flower girl and encouraged his following to drink her blood. One mother testified that she was made to drink her own daughter's blood. Now it seems that the tribe-like cult turned against him, and actually the leader was murdered himself in 2013. I guess he got what was coming to him. Okay, at number 2, I've put a tribe you've probably heard of. I'm saving one at number 1 that you might not have heard of. Getting a lot of press, we have the Sentinelese tribe. So you may have heard of this tribe in regards to the recent murder of John Allen Chow. He was a 26-year-old American missionary who was sent by the All Nations group to make contact and live with amongst the tribe. Basically, they were hoping to convert them to Christianity, which really wasn't a good idea because they killed him. This is the theme with people who come too close to this tribe. Now, the North Centennial Island is amid the Indian Ocean and has been home to the tribe for around 60,000 years. Until recently, the tribe has only been spotted through far-off images. But people keep getting closer and closer to them these days, and they don't like it. They've been known to fire arrows at low-flying planes. It's hard to contact a tribe who have literally no interest in communication, but most of those who have tried just haven't lived to tell the tale. Some have met their fury by accident. For example, in 2006, 2 fishermen who were illegally harvesting crabs were killed by the tribe. Now Chow, the missionary, is the most recent victim. He kept a journal of his attempts to contact the tribe, and he sang songs and offered them the Bible, but actually, instead, they shot and pierced the holy book with an arrow. I think this should have been a warning to him, but he persisted to no avail and was met with a mixture of laughter and hostility. In the end, it all got too much for the tribe, who decided to kill him. He was last seen by the crew who went with him on the adventure. He was dragged away. They said they saw him dragged away and killed, and they saw his lifeless body spotted on the shore. Gnarly. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the KOROWAI tribe. The KOROWAI tribe are one of the most feared tribes in the world. They were only discovered in 1974, and since then, encounters have been very limited. The tribe are based in Papua New Guinea, and they are known to live in trees as to have a height advantage when intruders come into their space. They are known to shoot arrows at any trespassers, and they believe that white people are actually possessed by ghosts or demons. So obviously, as a white person wandering into this tribe, you can imagine what might happen to you. It is actually thought that the KOROWAI tribe killed Michael Rockefeller, who disappeared after attempting contact in the 1960s. Some reports say that his body was seen amid the tribe on a beach. Now, in 2014, Australian journalist Paul Raphael visited the tribe and discovered that they do still very much eat people. That's right, they cannibalize the body of people who die under mysterious circumstances. Why? Because they think that they've been possessed by a kakua. A kakua basically is a bad spirit. The logic is they must eat the kakua as the kakua ate the person who died. It's an act of revenge. Everything is eaten by the tribe except the hair, nails, and penis. Do you want to stumble across this tribe? Rather you than me.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Aoreo. The Aoreo people are the indigenous people of the Gran Chaco, and they live in both Bolivia as well well as Paraguay. There are approximately 5,600 Aoreo peoples, and while many of them ended up becoming sedentarized by missionaries in the 20th century, there are around 100 people who have still maintained the traditional nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle and remain uncontacted. The Aoreo were first contacted by Jesuits in the 1720s to try and convert people to Catholicism, and in the 1740s the mission was abandoned and the Aoreo people were luckily left alone. Until the 1900s. The Chaco War between Bolivia and Paraguay brought in 100,000 troops to the territory, as well as all of the diseases that they carried. Both countries saw the Aoreo as a problem, and from the 1940s to the 1970s there was a rule where a Paraguayan soldier could be freed from service by killing an Aoreo. At this time, young Aoreo people were also being stolen, and one was even put on display in an exhibit. In the 1940s and 50s, the work of missionaries continued, and in the late 50s, missionaries used force and manipulation to remove the Aoreo from their land to various mission stations, and the land where they once lived was sold for cattle farming. These mission stations forced the Aoreo people living in them to give up their culture, including their religion, appearance, music, and diet, and missionaries sometimes convinced the Aoreo living at the missions to find other uncontacted Aoreo in the forest to sedentarize and convert, and in December of 1986 that unsurprisingly turned out to be a horrible idea that led to 5 deaths. The Aoreo people who are in contact now are struggling with both poverty as well as discrimination, and the uncontacted Aoreo have 6 main threats, which are cattle farming and deforestation, sale and allocation of their territory, searches for oil, missionaries seeking contact, illegal collection of territory resources, and violation of territory by various groups. I could dive into each one of these points and discuss why they are such a threat to these people, but I'll leave that for your homework because we've got to keep this list moving right along. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Tigeri. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. The Tigeri are an eastern Huaorani people living in the Ecuadorian Amazon basin. The group was once a part of the Huaorani families, but they separated off in 1968 after refusing missionary settlement, and since then have lived in isolation. Their name comes from one of their members' tag. There haven't been many interactions since then with other Huaorani, but the interactions that have happened are often met with violence. It is estimated that there are around 20 to 30 surviving Tigeri, and they are one of the 2 remaining indigenous groups living in voluntary isolation in Ecuador. These people are semi-nomadic and live off hunting and gathering as well as a few crops. Since 2007, there has been a national policy to try and help protect them that includes untouchability, self-determination, equality, and no contact. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Yanomami. The Yanomami people have been living in the rainforest stretching from southern Venezuela to northern Brazil for thousands and thousands of years. They are much larger than many of the other tribes that we've talked about, with around 35,000 people. There are Yanomami people who are in minimal contact, although they still maintain their traditions and way of life. They live in communal houses that can hold up to 400 people, and they strongly believe in equality with no chiefs or leaders, but instead teachers and shamans. Because of the contact they have had, however, there have been outbreaks of diseases such as malaria, tuberculosis, and influenza. These are fatal to their communities as they of course have no immunity built up. Some of these outbreaks first occurred in the 1970s, and the tribe is still struggling to contain them. In 7 years, more than 20% of the tribe passed away from this, combined with the conflict over the land that they live on. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Awa. The Awa are a group of people living in the eastern Amazon rainforest. There are around 350 living members, but not all of them remain uncontacted. Out of the 350, it is believed that around 100 members continue to try and remain uncontacted, although it unfortunately hasn't been as easy as it should be for them. The Awa were once settled people, but they began to live a more nomadic lifestyle around the 1800s in order to try and escape incursions by the Europeans. They were further threatened by settlers who cleared out most of the forests on their land. In 1982, the Brazilian government received a loan of $900 million from the World Bank and the European Union, but under a condition that the lands of certain indigenous peoples, including the Awa, would be protected. This should have been the key to helping protect these peoples, considering their lives were continually being threatened. There were many cases of tribes people being killed by settlers, and the forest on which they depended was being destroyed by logging and land clearance for farming. Unfortunately, it took the government over 20 years to actually act on this condition, and finally, in March of 2003, the Awa's land was finally distinguished. And to make matters a little worse for these people, there are always people who won't respect their land, no matter what laws are in place. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Taro Menane. Remember a couple of points ago how the Tigeri, how I mentioned that they were one of the last last 2 uncontacted tribes in Ecuador? Well, this is the last one. These people live on the Yasuni National Park in the Ecuadorian Amazon basin, and this tribe also has some distinct relations to the Huaorani people. There is estimated to be around 150 to 30 people in this tribe who maintain their nomadic lifestyle in the rainforest. While, like everyone else on this list, 2 of their main threats are oil development and illegal loggers, these guys have another, more unexpected threat, and that is the Huaorani. In 2013, more than 20 of this tribe were killed by other Huaorani, which left 2 child survivors who were taken as hostages. Apparently, the people who took part in this terrible tragedy bragged about it on national television at first, calling themselves braves for attacking and taking the lives of unarmed people with rifles, pistols, and long spears, and even went as far as selling photos of it to the highest bidder. There is so much to cover in regards to this one incident that I unfortunately just don't have time for, but the whole situation is extremely tragic and just downright horrible. Much of these disputes stem from the land that they share because of the fact that this tribe has been pushed deeper into the forest from the Huaorani, allowing oil companies to drill on the land. It is of course a very complicated issue that has so much more to it. In our number 5 spot today we have the Toromona. The Toromona are a group of people who are indigenous to Bolivia, and they live near the upper Madidi River, which is a part of the Amazon basin, and the Heath River in the northwestern area of Bolivia. There hasn't been any notable contact with this tribe aside from other indigenous tribes, but this tribe was talked about a lot when a Norwegian biologist searched specifically for the tribe for many years before he mysteriously disappeared in the region of the Madidi Park in 1997. This tribe has remained quite isolated, and the most recent known sighting in the 21st century was when the Aarona people of Bolivia informed an anthropologist named Michael Brohan that they had contacted a group that was in voluntary isolation on the eastern bank of the Manarini River. It wasn't confirmed that this was the Toromona tribe, but it is believed that that's who they saw. Thankfully, in 2006, Bolivia's administrative resolution created an exclusive, reserved, and untouchable portion of the Madidi National Park in order to protect the Toromona and their desires to be uncontacted. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Carafayana. The Carafayana are an extremely small group of only about 50 people who remain extremely uncontacted. Because of this, there is very little information available about them. They are located within the Amazon regions of Brazil, so like many of the other tribes that live in the area, they are threatened by illegal logging, oil companies, and destruction of their land. It is believed that they practice a religion that is based on other living creatures and things around them, such as plants and animals, but the specifics of this remain very much a mystery. They are a nomadic group of hunter-gatherers, and it is unclear if they partake in any kinds of agriculture or horticulture. While it would be of course super interesting and great to know more about this tribe and the people, it is kind of refreshing to hear about a tribe we know so little about because they mostly have just been left alone. Of course, that doesn't mean the outside world has been great to them, but just maybe less worse. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Sapanawa. The Sapanawa are a group living in the uncontacted frontier, which is the area of land that straddles the borders of Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil, and is the home to more uncontacted tribes than anywhere else on Earth. A group of Sapawana people recently made contact in 2014 because of the fact that their homes were attacked and burnt to the ground by outsiders. So many of their people passed away in this brutal attack that they were unable to bury them all. This all stems from the lack of punishment that has been given to illegal loggers and drug smugglers in the region, as well as all the missionaries in the area who are careless when it comes to spreading the diseases that we may have built up an immunity to, but the same cannot be said for these uncontacted tribes. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Moxitetu. These people are one of the last remaining uncontacted tribes that are a part of the Yanomami people. They have all the similar traditions and values, and the Yanomami people who are in contact have reported seeing them before. They also explained that they are living in the area of the forest with the highest concentration of illegal miners, which poses many threats to their way of life. Not only are these miners bringing the potentially fatal diseases that we've discussed, but there of course will also be major and deadly conflict if the tribe comes in contact with the miners. The mining not only harms the land they live on, but the miners use high-powered hoses and mercury to extract the gold, which then pollutes the rivers and the forest. Most of the mining is illegal in the first place, and near gold mining sites, the plants and animals surrounding them have been found to have extremely high levels of mercury contamination. With these plants and animals being the only source of food for this tribe, this mining is also increasing their chance of severe health problems due to the contamination. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Sentinelese. The Sentinelese are the tribe who inhabit North Sentinel Island in the Bay of Bengal in the northeastern Indian Ocean. They have actively resisted any contact from the outside world and are known to kill anyone who tries to trespass on their land. In 1956, the government of India declared the island a tribal reserve and prohibited any travel within 3 nautical miles of the island, which truthfully is for the best. It is unclear how many people are in the tribe, but it is estimated to be between 15 to 500 people, with somewhere around 50 to 200 being the most likely. The Sentinelese are hunter-gatherers, and they use bow and arrows to hunt wildlife and as well to catch local seafood. As of right now, it isn't believed that they take part in agriculture, but it is tough to say as we of course cannot really get a look inside their ways of life. The first peaceful contact was made with the Sentinelese in 1991, but visits to the island stopped in 1997, and that is probably the right thing. While it would be amazing to know more about this tribe and their ways of life, the feeling clearly isn't mutual, so the right thing would be to just let them live their lives the way they want.
Coming in at our number 10 spot, Funai Agent. Located in the Amazonian jungle, the KORUBO tribe is estimated to have a population of roughly 150 people and are definitely not a tribe to visit. While there have been previous successful attempts at making contact with the KORUBO people, on August 2nd, 1997, a member of Brazil's Funai Agency, which is a government group dedicated to the protection of isolated communities, attempted to make contact with the group, trying to establish peaceful relations with the community. But this man would not make it out alive. In fact, in over a decade, the Funai lost 7 of its men in an attempt to make contact with the KORUBO people, and finally decided they would no longer try. The government still provides them with modern immunizations and established their community as a national park in order to halt logging. Not much else is known of the isolated group, as the government will not let any anthropologists visit in fear they may not return.
Coming in at number 9, we have the ASARO tribe. Have a look at the ASARO tribe. Usually, I wouldn't say you should ever judge people by the way they look, but when it comes to tribes, I would say, actually, if they look threatening, that's because they want to scare you. They want to scare you off and, maybe you should be scared off. What happens if you don't heed that warning? Do you really want to find out? The ASARO tribe are also known as the ASARO Mudmen because of their masks, which are made from mud. They're also hella spooky. The story behind the mud is that one time they approached an enemy after hiding out in a muddy bank. The enemy thought that they were spirits and fled. Would you like to see them in action? The ASARO are actually pretty harmless, but their masks do make me worry.
Coming in at number 8, 1950s Mennonites. Located in Bolivia and the Paraguay, the Oreo people are a very isolated group. About 5,000 members remain in the community, and while their current threat is deforestation, you also don't want to take your chances visiting this community. Their first known contact with outsiders was way back in the 40s and 50s, when a large group of Mennonite farmers forcibly took their land to raise pigs. Well, as you can imagine, this did not go over well, and many were killed by the Oreo people. Later again, in 1986, a group of missionaries attempting to evangelize the community was not well appreciated, and 5 men did not make it out alive. Long story short, just leave them alone and they'll leave you alone. Next up at number 7, Don Phillips and Bruno Pereira. In an attempt to write a novel on how to help save the Amazonian rainforest, journalist Don Phillips and an indigenous rights activist, Bruno Pereira, headed into the lawless jungle and never returned. After being reported missing for a few weeks, remains of the 2 men were actually found, but who or what killed them in the depths of the jungle is unknown. Some believe it could have been a tribe defending their land, while others have theorized it could have been other intruders, as the two men were writing a novel revealing the dark underbelly of the area. Whatever it was, I think it's safe to say it's best to keep out of the isolated communities, or you run the risk of never being seen again. Next up at number 6, Nicolas Flores. Largely gathered in Peru, the Mashapiro tribe is estimated to have between 100 and 250 members, and they are considered extremely dangerous to any outsider. In 2012, in fact, archaeologist Diego Cortillo visited the isolated community in an attempt to learn and get pictures of the Mashapiro people, which he did, and they were released later in a Survival International. However, it was his local guide Nicolas Flores who was found dead 6 days later with bamboo-tipped arrow struck through his heart. Most likely meant as a sign to ward off further intruders, as the clan likely fears being killed by disease or having their communities taken over by outsiders, as has been attempted in the past. Either way, best to just steer clear. Next up at number 5, Riel Franciscado. Now, not too long ago, in June of 2020, a longtime member of FUNAI and an expert of the Amazonian attempted to make contact with the Uru-i-Wau-Wau territory in Rondonia. His life mission was to protect these people, and though he was known to make successful and peaceful attempts with other communities in the past, this time he would not be so lucky. Likely thought to be an attacker by the local tribe, as is often the case in their experience with many poachers and illegal loggers known to frequent the area. Franciscado was shot through the heart with a bow and arrow and left for dead. A witness claims that Riel cried out and actually pulled the arrow from his chest and began to run away, but not long after collapsed. It seems like no matter what your motives might be, that these people do not want you there, so let's just all agree to stop trying. Next up, at number 4, Alejandro Lavaca and Inez Arango. Located in Ecuador, the Tigray people live a hunting and foraging lifestyle and have long resisted outsiders in their community. Most notably, back in 1987, when a bishop, Alejandro Lavaca, and his sister, Inez Arango, decided to travel to the area in hopes to preach Christianity to the locals. They were dropped off by helicopter and planned to be picked up a few days later, but as I'm sure you've guessed, this would not be the case. A few days went by and the helicopter pilot came back to retrieve the bishop and his sister, only to find them brutally killed, their corpses laid out as a warning sign to intruders. Do not come back. This would not stop people, however, as recently as 2008, a man was found in the area with 9 iron-headed spears jutting out of his stomach. Coming in at number 3, John Allen Cho. Likely the most well-known of the isolated clans, the Sentinelese people live on a wooden island in the Indian Ocean and are fierce protectors of their home. The community made headlines when, in 2018, even though it was and still is illegal to visit this tribe, an American missionary named John Allen Cho ignored all laws and decided he would still visit the indigenous people to spread the word of God. He managed to bribe several fishermen in order to reach the island, and as was completely expected, the Sentinele assassinated him not too long after his arrival, likely with bows and arrows. All the fishermen that helped Cho in his mission were arrested, and the island remains illegal to all visitors. Next up at number 2, we have Helena Valero. Okay, so this one is kind of cheating because she did in fact return, but this story is so crazy I had to include it on the list. Back in the 1930s, a young girl named Helena Valero was kidnapped at just 13 years old when her family was attacked by a nearby tribe. Helena lived near the Amazon forest with her farmer parents, but once captured was taken to live with a tribe known as Shemateri. Helena accidentally gave poisonous toad eggs to one of the other children, and that child's father found out and threatened to kill her. So she ran away deeper into the forest where she lived for 7 months. Eventually, she ended up reaching a new tribe called the Namote, but was not welcome at first, so once again, she fled back into the woods, believing they were going to kill her. But things took a turn when later she was caught by the head man of the tribe and ended up actually falling in love with and marrying him, becoming his third wife. Years went by and Helena had 2 children with the chief, but sadly, he was killed by an opposing tribe. This threatened Helena and the life of her children. Scared for her and her children's life, she fled with them to another nearby tribe, uninvolved with the feud, and eventually married again. Unlike her previous marriage, however, her second husband was not kind to her, but still she gave him 2 more children. Her life takes a turn when the tribe that killed her first husband relocated near her once again, and Helena, fearing for her life and terribly unhappy in her marriage, escaped to live among white men again. But rather shockingly, upon her return to her previous home, she was rejected by her family and living in poverty and not well taken care of at all. Helena eventually decided life was better among the Yanomami people and returned to live out the remainder of her life there. Coming in our number 1 spot is Michael Rockefeller. Located in South Papua, Indonesia, the Otsjanup village belongs to the Asmat people, and unlike some of the others on this list, they're not actually widely known as being specifically violent or dangerous. In fact, in modern times, while still very isolated, they've been known to seek out higher education and incorporate modern technologies into the village. But in November of 1961, one man would not be so lucky. Michael Rockefeller, the son of famous and incredibly wealthy New York governor, disappeared on an expedition to visit the Asmat people. He was apparently on the trip as he was looking to curate a collection of the local art from the isolated group to bring back to his family's museum in New York. But he would never make it back. Rockefeller was last seen swimming to the shore when his boat overturned, and for years, no one really knew what happened to him. But recently, author Carl Hoffman decided to dive into the tale and see what he could find. He revisited the exact location where Michael traveled all those years ago, and according to the locals he spoke with, they said, quote, "On shore, he saw familiar faces, those of the Otsjanup warriors. Instead of the rescue Rockefeller hoped for, he was stabbed in the ribs by one of the men, fatally killed in the precise actions of ritualistic headhunting, and consumed by the warriors."